There's a region of Antarctica where 32 countries have agreed no one is allowed to go. No scientific bases, no research stations, no expeditions. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 designates certain areas as strictly off-limits, and violating these restrictions can result in international prosecution. A joint research team accidentally crossed into one of these forbidden zones while tracking unusual seismic activity. What they found in the ice has caused emergency classified meetings at the United Nations and urgent calls between world leaders. The team's preliminary report was immediately sealed, and satellite imagery of the area has been scrubbed from public databases. Here's what we know from the leaked fragments of that report and why governments are desperate to keep this information contained. The research team was from the University of Cambridge's Antarctic Survey program, tracking seismic readings that had been anomalous since September 2023. Ground-penetrating radar showed massive voids beneath the ice sheet in an area called the Gamburtsev Mountains, a range buried under 2 miles of ice that's been sealed for 14 million years. But here's what made the readings impossible. The voids weren't natural caverns formed by geological processes. They were geometric, perfect 90-degree angles, chambers connected by passages. And most disturbing, the radar detected temperature differentials, suggesting some areas were significantly warmer than the surrounding ice, which sits at -40 degrees Celsius year-round. 2023, the team drilled through the ice sheet at the coordinates where readings were strongest. At 1.8 miles depth, the drill bit broke through into empty space. They lowered a camera probe. What it recorded has been classified, but 3 details leaked from team members before they were silenced by non-disclosure agreements. First, the chamber was not natural. Smooth walls, carved passages, evidence of construction using methods that left no tool marks but created surfaces smoother than modern manufacturing can achieve. Second, the chamber wasn't empty. Structures were present that the team initially described as equipment or machinery before being corrected by military officials who reviewed the footage to call them objects of unknown origin and purpose. Third, the carbon dating of ice samples from the chamber walls showed the space had been sealed 14 million years ago. But the objects inside showed no ice accumulation, no degradation, and in the words of one geologist before his account was deleted, they looked operational. The timeline is impossible. 14 million years ago, human ancestors were tree-dwelling primates. Homo sapiens wouldn't exist for another 13.7 million years. Modern humans have existed for 300,000 years. We've had advanced civilization for 12,000 years. We've had industrial technology for 200 years. Whatever created the structures under Antarctica did so when our ancestors couldn't walk upright, let alone engineer geometric chambers 2 miles under ice in the most inhospitable environment on Earth. But here's what makes this terrifying. Instead of just impossible, the team's electromagnetic readings detected active energy signatures, not residual, not decaying, active, as in something down there is still powered. After 14 million years under ice, in complete darkness, at temperatures that should preserve anything in absolute stasis, something is generating detectable electromagnetic fields. The leaked technical specifications describe frequency patterns that don't match any known natural or artificial source. The fields pulse in regular intervals, every 6.4 seconds, a burst of electromagnetic radiation that would require, according to one physicist's calculation, approximately 1.2 megawatts of continuous power. For context, a modern nuclear submarine generates about 40 megawatts for propulsion and all systems. Whatever is under the ice in Antarctica is using 3% of a submarine's power output. And it's been doing it for 14 million years. Within 72 hours of the discovery, the research site was shut down. The British Antarctic Survey pulled the entire team out on emergency transport. Military aircraft from the United States, Russia, and China all flew into McMurdo Station, the largest research base in Antarctica. These 3 countries haven't coordinated military operations in decades. They did this time. But here's what's more revealing than what they did. It's what they said. The official statement from the Antarctic Treaty Secretariat claimed the team had violated protected zone regulations and environmental contamination protocols. The area was declared off-limits for ecological preservation. This is a region where nothing lives. Nothing has lived for 14 million years. What ecosystem are they protecting? Satellite imagery tells a different story. Commercial satellites that photograph Antarctica regularly show that within a week of the discovery, heavy equipment was transported to the site. Not research equipment, construction equipment, excavators, drilling rigs, prefabricated building structures large enough to house 100-plus personnel. Then in January 2024, all commercial satellite providers received requests from multiple governmental entities to stop photographing specific coordinates in Antarctica. The requests were accompanied by classified national security justifications. If you try to view recent high-resolution satellite imagery of the Gamburtsev mountain region now, you'll find it's either blurred, outdated, or simply unavailable. 3 images from the probe camera circulated on academic networks before being scrubbed. These images were posted by one of the geologists, supposedly by accident, before he was removed from the project. I've seen 2 of them before they were deleted. I'm describing what they showed because the images themselves are gone. The first image showed a chamber wall, not ice, not rock, a surface that appeared metallic or ceramic with what looked like panels or sections that had distinct seams. The lighting in the image came from the probe's LED, and the surface reflected it uniformly, suggesting either polished metal or some kind of composite material. There were markings on the surface, not writing, not symbols we could recognize, geometric patterns that looked potentially functional rather than decorative, like circuit board traces, but on a scale that covered entire wall sections. The second image showed what the team had initially called machinery. Cylindrical objects, about 2 meters in diameter, arranged in a row along one wall. They appeared to be connected by smaller cylindrical tubes. The objects had surface features, indentations and protrusions that suggested they weren't solid blocks, but had internal components or mechanisms. One physicist who saw the image before it vanished said it reminded him of industrial equipment, like generators or processing units, but with an aesthetic that didn't match any human engineering tradition. The third image, which I didn't see but was described by people who did, apparently showed a passage leading deeper into the ice. The passage was tall enough for humans to walk through, which immediately raised questions because if this was 14 million years old, why would it be human scale? The passage had lighting, not artificial lighting installed by the research team. Lighting that appeared to be coming from the walls themselves. A blue-green glow that illuminated the passage without any visible light sources. That detail, more than anything else, sparked panic. If the lighting was still operational after 14 million years, it meant power systems were still active. It meant whatever built this wasn't just ancient, it was functional. In February 2024, 2 separate papers were submitted to peer-reviewed journals analyzing the discovery. Both were accepted for publication, then retracted within 48 hours. The official reason given was failure to verify data sources and potential hoax material, but the papers were written by credentialed researchers from the Cambridge team, using data that other scientists had confirmed was legitimate before the classified lockdown. One paper analyzed the electromagnetic frequencies detected at the site. It concluded that the frequency patterns showed characteristics of intentional signaling rather than random electromagnetic noise. The paper suggested the pulses might be carrying information, though the encoding method was unlike any human radio or digital communication system. The mathematical analysis showed the pulses had structure, repetition, and what the authors called algorithmic properties consistent with data transmission. The other paper examined the metallurgical analysis of microscopic particles recovered from the drill site before it was shut down. The particles showed elemental compositions that don't occur naturally. alloys that would require precise temperature control and atmospheric conditions to manufacture, radios of rare earth elements that suggested extraction and refinement processes. The paper concluded the particles were inconsistent with natural geological formation and consistent with industrial manufacturing of unknown methodology. Both papers are gone, removed from academic servers. The authors have refused to comment, citing non-disclosure agreements they signed retroactively after the papers were submitted. Other scientists who referenced the papers in their own work received legal warnings about discussing classified material. This isn't the first time something inexplicable has been found in Antarctica and immediately classified. In 2001, a team drilling into Lake Vostok, a subglacial lake that's been sealed for 15 million years, detected anomalous magnetic readings. The project was suspended. Russian military took over the site. All data was classified. When drilling resumed in 2012, the results were never publicly released beyond vague statements about finding microbial life. In 2018, NASA's Operation Icebridge detected a massive circular structure under the ice in Wilkes Land. Initial measurements suggested it was a crater from an asteroid impact, but the structure was too perfectly circular, and ground-penetrating radar showed it had internal chambers. The discovery was announced, then NASA stopped discussing it. Subsequent missions avoided the area. But here's the pattern that connects these incidents. Every time something is found in Antarctica that doesn't fit geological explanations, there's a brief window of scientific excitement, followed by military involvement, classification of data, and official explanations that don't address the anomalies. Lake Vostok had unusual magnetic readings, but they found microbial life. The Wilkes Land structure was perfectly circular with internal chambers, but it's called an asteroid crater. And now the Gamburtsev discovery has geometric chambers with active power sources. But it's classified for ecological protection. The implications are civilization ending, not physically, but conceptually. If structures were built under Antarctic ice 14 million years ago, it means intelligence existed on Earth before humans. Not just before modern humans. Before any hominid species. Before our evolutionary line split from other primates. That's not a minor revision to history. That's a complete invalidation of our understanding of life on Earth. It means either a non-human intelligence evolved here and went extinct, leaving almost no trace except for installations under Antarctica, or it means something came from elsewhere, built structures here, and left. The first suggests we're not the first intelligent species on Earth, which means intelligence might be common in evolutionary terms, which means we might not be special or permanent. When and whether it's still happening. But here's why the active power systems make it exponentially worse. If the structures were dead, they could be studied as archaeology. Mysterious, revolutionary, but ultimately historical. Active systems mean either they're autonomous and have been running for 14 million years, which violates thermodynamics and everything we know about energy and decay, or they're being maintained, which means something is still there. The electromagnetic pulses detected by the research team occur every 6.4 seconds. They've been monitored continuously since the discovery. They haven't stopped. They haven't varied. Whatever is generating them has been doing so consistently for at least 4 months since detection. Possibly for 14 million years. That level of technological stability is terrifying. Our most advanced systems, our nuclear reactors, our satellites, our infrastructure, all degrade, all require maintenance, all have finite operational lifespans measured in decades at most. Something under Antarctic ice has been operating for 14 million years without maintenance, without fuel replenishment, without any human intervention because humans didn't exist. The construction activity at the site hasn't stopped. Updated reports from McMurdo Station personnel, speaking anonymously, describe regular flights to the Gamburtsev region, not scientists. Military personnel and individuals identified as technical contractors, which is typically code for defense industry specialists. They're building something. Not a research station. Research stations have visible above ice structures, communication arrays, and regular supply flights. Whatever they're building is being constructed primarily below the ice surface. Deep drilling operations have continued. Seismic activity in the region has increased, suggesting excavation or expansion of the underground access. Here's what we can infer from the pattern. They're not studying it from the surface. They're going in. They're accessing the chambers. They're attempting to understand what's down there, not through remote sensing, but through direct investigation. And they're doing it in complete secrecy with international military cooperation that's unprecedented. The Antarctic Treaty, signed by 54 countries, is supposed to ensure transparency and peaceful scientific cooperation on the continent. Everything found in Antarctica is supposed to be shared openly with the international scientific community. That's not happening here. Instead, we have military lockdown, classified briefings, and information suppression. The most disturbing detail comes from a climatologist who worked at McMurdo Station and left in March 2024. She reported that in January, during the peak construction phase, there was a seismic event measuring 4.2 on the Richter scale centered directly under the Gamburtsev site. Earthquakes in Antarctica are rare. Earthquakes directly under active excavation sites are suspicious. Earthquakes that occur and then result in all non-military personnel being evacuated from the region for 48 hours suggest something happened that they didn't want witnesses for. When personnel returned, new restrictions were in place. No discussion of the project. No geological sampling in the region. No unauthorized radio communication. The entire area within 50 kilometers of the site became a no-fly zone for civilian aircraft. If this was purely scientific research, why is it classified? Science advances through peer review and replication. Discoveries are published. Data is shared. The greatest archaeological find in human history should be front-page news for months. Instead, it's buried under classification and threats. If this was just ancient geology, why are three nuclear powers cooperating on military operations? Russia and the United States don't coordinate on anything. China operates independently in almost all international contexts. Yet all three have personnel at McMurdo Station, and all three are involved in whatever is happening at the Gamburtsev site. That level of cooperation only happens for existential threats or discoveries so significant that national rivalries become irrelevant. If the structures are really 14 million years old and inactive, why the urgency? Why the immediate lockdown? Why evacuate scientists and replace them with military personnel within 72 hours of discovery? That response pattern suggests either imminent danger or something active that requires containment. And most importantly, why is the electromagnetic signal still pulsing? Every 6.4 seconds, regular as clockwork. If it's natural, what geological process creates perfectly timed electromagnetic bursts? If it's technological, what power source lasts 14 million years? Who or what is it signaling to? The discovery under Antarctic ice, if the leaked information is accurate, represents a complete breakdown of our historical and scientific framework. We can't explain it with current theories. We can't integrate it into our understanding of Earth's history. We can't reconcile advanced technology with a timeline that predates human existence by 13.7 million years. That's why it's classified. Not because governments are evil or conspiratorial, because they have no idea what to do with information that invalidates fundamental assumptions about reality. How do you tell 8 billion people that intelligent construction happened on Earth before humans existed? How do you explain that active technology is operating under Antarctica, and we don't know what it is, what it does, or who built it?
You can't, so you classify it.
You restrict access. You control information. You buy time to figure out what you're dealing with before causing global panic or admitting that humanity might not be the first or only intelligent presence on this planet. The scientists who saw what's under the ice and resigned aren't doing it because they're scared of consequences. They're doing it because they've seen evidence that rewrites everything, and they can't continue their careers pretending that established science is still valid when they know it isn't. Whatever is under the Antarctic ice in the Forbidden Zone has been there for 14 million years. It's still active. Multiple governments are desperately trying to understand it while keeping it secret. And the electromagnetic signal detected in December 2023 is still pulsing every 6.4 seconds, sending a pattern we can't decode to a destination we can't identify, from a source we can't explain. The world isn't ready for the truth. But the truth is 2 miles under Antarctic ice, and it's not waiting for us to be ready.